What's up, everybody? Good to see you all. Once again, Paramedic Adventure 17. It's Matt, that firefighter medic guy. You know me. I am that guy. I got somebody that wants to say hi real quick. You just happened to jump up in my lap here as I was getting ready to start this video. Maverick thought he would check in and make sure we're working hard, you know. Can't be slacking off. There's things to get done. As my production manager, sound coordinator, he's in charge of all of my brand deals and advertising. He wears many hats. So he just wanted to make sure that, you know, I'm not up here slacking and that we're actually getting work done. I know, it's nap time. It's the middle afternoon nap time. One other thing I want to share with you before we get this vlog started. You might notice this little duck right here. The little beanie baby. This little duck is pretty special to me. And there's a interesting story as to why I'm holding this. This duck was my other cat, whose name was Chief, or I called him Big Chief. He was about like Maverick size, same color, everything. And I had him for almost 17 years. He sadly passed away in November of 2022. Whatever happened, he got really sick really fast, and whatever it was overtook him really quickly, and had to make that awful decision that no pet owner ever wants to make, but it's for the better because they're suffering really badly. But anyway, this was his favorite toy. This duck, or as we call Ducky, we'd tell him, go get Ducky, where's Ducky? And he'd go get it. And so after he passed away, I had kind of kept this out, and then I gave it to Maverick. And Maverick loved to play with Ducky. It's almost like Maverick knew that this little duck belonged to another pet that I own that was very special. So Maverick played with this duck for a long time. Now, I've had Maverick for about 3 years. I haven't seen Ducky in about 2.5 years. I'm going to put him up here while we do this vlog here. Like I said, I haven't seen him in about 2.5 years. In fact, I had thought that maybe, he got lost, accidentally got swept up somewhere, thrown out with the trash, whatever. But I haven't seen Ducky in ages. And all of a sudden today, I was sitting in here, right like I am now, editing another video, and I didn't have the camera on, so I couldn't see Maverick coming through the door, but I heard him whining, like he just, like almost like he was sad. And I turned around, and he's got Ducky in his mouth, and he comes right over to me, and he drops it right by my feet, and then he just sits there. Like, hey, buddy, I found this for you. And, it's amazing because our pets, they just know when we need something. It's there, especially cats. Cats are amazing creatures at being able to understand human emotions. And today's been all right. It's cold. It's barely 52, and I know. Hold on a minute. Hold on. I know all you up north where it's in the negatives. You're like, 52? Are you out of your mind? What do you mean that's cold? When you live in Florida, your blood, thins out, because 52 to me up north, yeah, that would feel like a heat wave, but it's different here. It's very humid. It's 52 degrees with like 98% humidity, and 52 actually feels like 30. But anyway, it's chilly. It's, the sun's going down early. It's starting to get cold again. It's going to start dipping into the 40s, and we're going to get into the mid to low 30s tonight. And I think because of the weather being all over the place, I'm feeling under the weather. I think a lot of it's too just working endlessly, trying to help people, get everybody through this flu surge we've been having. And of course, staffing levels have been impacted by this, and it's been a lot. And just some other things going on that I'm working through. And it was just like, this early afternoon, it was just like, yeah, just was kind of just feeling a little off, you got a little bit of sadness going on, but working through it. And lo and behold, here comes Maverick with Ducky in his mouth. Like I said, he's whining, and I look down, and he literally drops it right next to me, right by my feet, right where I'm sitting. And there he is, actually, right here. He's still checking in on us, making sure we're doing all right. And I haven't seen this little duck in, like I said, at least 2.5 years. Where he got it from, I have no idea. But wherever he got it from, it means he was holding it there somewhere, just waiting for the perfect time, I guess. And, it's just amazing. You look at that, and it's something as small and as tattered as this little yellow duck is, it just makes you feel a little bit better, because it's kind of like it's like a sign from above that, everything's going to be all right, and that people are looking out for you, including our pets. And so, since Maverick found Ducky, he's going to sit right here on the microphone, probably for a very long time. Hopefully he doesn't disappear again, because like I said, I know this little duck is pretty tattered and war-torn. He's been loved a lot. That's a toy that's definitely been loved by Big Chief and now Maverick. So, just a little story I thought I'd share with you before we begin. All right, today's vlog, I got a good one for y'all. Got a little story time. One of the things that people commented on in one of my other vlogs, talking about a bunch of things I want to do for the upcoming year, and moving the channel forward with different things, outside of the theme parks, and changing things up, and also building on what people seem to really like. A lot of people requested a lot more story times, fire department, paramedic story times, whether it be from the theme parks, fire department, however the story came about. People really want to hear those. And I've got a bunch. I've got, holy cow, where am I at now? Years of service, including my volunteer days. I'm at 24.5 years of stories of firefighting. And this year will be my 18th year of being a paramedic. So that's a lot of years and a lot of stories. And when you are involved in things like that, they stick up here and you don't forget them. You can recall them almost like it's yesterday. And so I have hundreds, if not thousands, of stories to share for you all, both of things I've been a part of, funny things that have happened at the firehouse, what it was like getting into the fire service, what it was like during my volunteer time when I was a volunteer firefighter, my first ever fire call ever. There's just all kinds of really neat stories. And also, I'll get it out one of these days. Again, we'll do another vlog. Maybe even try a live stream. But I have a giant box in the closet that's full of newspaper clippings of many of the incidents that I've been a part of over the years. And so I might get those out and share some of that with you. So like I said, there's an endless amount of possibilities of, doing story time for everybody. So the last story time I did was at SeaWorld. This time, we're going to move forward to the fire department. This time, we're going to change gears a little bit. We're going to go to a fire department story. Now, right away, I want to let you all know this story I'm going to tell you does not involve me. This was actually before my time with the City of Monticello Fire Department. This story, though, involves a guy that became one of my best mentors. And the guy was just an amazing example of what an excellent firefighter, paramedic, an excellent officer, an excellent husband, an excellent father. This guy encompassed all of that. And by getting a chance to learn underneath him, and then there's another guy also who was my lieutenant, who I've got lots of stories about as well. I'll share those another day. But this first guy, who, again, was one of my main mentors of the fire service when I became full-time paid with the City of Monticello, this is his story. And when you hear this, you can understand why I have the passion that I have. And so everything that's going to be laid out and talked about in the story I'm about to tell you is everything that encompasses a firefighter paramedic, especially one that's very good at what they do and takes a ton of pride in what they do. As we've always said, it's not a job. This is not a job. firefighting. If you're a firefighter, you're a paramedic, you're a police officer, you're in the military, even if you work in the hospital, as one of the various functions in the hospital, it's not a job. This is a calling. It's something you live every day. My captain, who I'm going to talk about here, he performs the function of firefighter paramedic so incredibly well. And all his teachings are just, anybody that's ever had the chance to learn underneath him ends up becoming excellent if they take his tools and apply them in their regular life, and also apply them in firefighting. And so my captain here, he's that guy that from the first moment I shook his hand when I knew I was going to be assigned to his shift, I could not wait to learn everything I could from him, and then my lieutenant also that worked on that shift. Like I said, we'll talk about my lieutenant in another vlog because he's got some pretty amazing stories as well. And by me learning from both of those two men, all the teachings that they had, and then applying that, it turned me into the excellent firefighter paramedic that I am even to current day. And so this story that I'm about to tell you happened about 2 to 3 years before I started with Monticello Fire Department. This story was legendary around the kitchen table in our firehouse. And then also the story got to be told again during my second year as a firefighter with the city of Monticello, because everybody had decided that year that we were going to start an awards ceremony in the summer, right after the 4th of July. We thought it was very important that firefighter, paramedics, officers, and anybody associated with the fire department and the public and also the police department be recognized for their efforts that go well above and beyond the call of duty. Putting your life on the line for an extremely dangerous situation, helping people in need when you don't have to, coming into work when you don't have to, covering people. There's a million things that, there's hundreds of things that you could, list as going well above and beyond. But a lot of the awards handed out for these award ceremonies were, the Medal of Honor, Medal of Valor, life-saving fire rescue, life-saving medical, distinguished service, Purple Heart. All of those medals were awarded to firefighter paramedics for their extraordinary call to duty and going well above and beyond what's expected, and taking their own life and laying it down so they could help save somebody else and give that other person a second chance at life. There's that saying, and it's one of my favorites, or no greater love hath no man than to lay down his life for a friend. And that embodies the fire service. And then there's another quote that I live by to this day, and they ingrain this in you from day one. The number one ultimate rule, and also a cardinal sin if you violate it. Basically, if you violate it, there's a really good chance you're going to be ousted from the fire department that you're with. And if it's found out in any other departments you may try to apply for, there's a chance you may not get a shot with those departments either. But that number one rule, the golden rule of the fire service, is never leave your partner behind. Never, no matter how bad it gets. You go, we go. And I apply that a lot in my life. Every call I've gone on with that mindset. Everything I do, I approach it with that. And this story is a perfect example of that mindset. Like I said, I was not involved in this. I've heard it, though, many times, and I never get tired of hearing it, and I certainly don't ever get tired of telling it. And this is one of the first times I'm telling it, to a camera instead of a bunch of people sitting in front of me, because it makes me proud to tell this story. It makes me proud that my captain was somebody I was able to learn under. It makes me proud that I was able to learn the things I know to this day from my captain that pulled off this insane rescue. So let's start the story, shall we? Welcome, everybody. This is the story of the Francesville water tower rescue. And I've got pictures that I found online through the interwebs that I'm going to be putting in here, probably over here. One, where the hell is Francesville? I'm going to show you. Two, where is this water tower and how tall is it? I can't find the exact height of the water tower, but if I can remember from the award ceremony when they told the story, because my captain was awarded the Medal of Honor for this. Like that was an insane rescue that he pulled off, and it had a positive outcome. Again, we're going to talk about it. I believe in the story that they told at the award ceremony, it's somewhere between the height of 250 and 300 feet tall, if I'm not mistaken. I do know it is pretty high at the very top of the bell. And also, it was right around this time of year. It was the middle of January in Indiana. And those of you that know the upper north and the northeast and the northwest and whatnot, wintertime sucks up there. It's very cold. It can be snowy. It can ice. It can rain. You can have all that going on, and you can have insane winds, which is why I moved south. I can't stand the winters anymore. It's been nice being down here. I love the warmth, except for today. Anyway, this was about this time of year, and to set the stage, this took place in Francesville, Indiana. Francesville was located about 30-ish minutes north of Monticello. Throw that up here. I pulled it up on Google Maps. Again, it's a little bitty town, little tiny farm town with a volunteer fire department, which I think at the time had maybe 8 to 10 members maximum. And so the story goes that around noon, one of the guys from the town of Francesville that worked for the town, he did maintenance on the Francesville water tower. And just so happened that day he needed to climb up there and do maintenance on the top bell of the water tower. Now, to set the stage too, the weather absolutely sucked that day. It was a day similar to yesterday where the temperature, there was a front that came through, the temperature started to plummet, a lot of wind, a lot of rain that turned to sleet, then turned to ice, then turned to snow. And by the time everything was said and done with, the temperatures were right around, I think, 14, 15 degrees tops. And then, again, add in a 15 to 25 mile an hour wind on top of that. Pretty rough conditions. So the storm hadn't gone through yet, so the guy thought, I need to go up there. I need to do maintenance on the top bell. I guess there's a hatch or something up there that needed fixed. So he thought he would get up there before the weather really got bad. So he started to climb. Now, the only way to get to the top of this water tower, there's a ladder on the side. I got a couple other images. There's a ladder on the side that's got a center channel that goes down the middle. Now, the guys that climb this that worked for the town, they have a little ladder belt, and on the edge of that ladder belt is like a little pin, kind of like this marker. That pin sticks out of the ladder belt, and it goes into the center channel of that ladder. And as you climb up, that pin hits off these little cogs, if you will, and that kind of click, click, click all the way up. That way, if you slipped, it would lock in place, and you wouldn't fall to your death from however high up that would be, And so the guy put that on, and he starts to climb up there. Like I said, you're going somewhere between 250 and 300 feet. He's got his tool belt and everything. Again, this is 2003, 2004. Cell phones aren't widely available yet. They're coming out, but not everybody has one. You got to remember that too. So he gets up there, and apparently, because of the height difference, from previous storms and previous rain, the top of the bell had ice on it. Because, again, 250, 300 feet high, you got a lot more wind up there, and it's a lot colder. So there were patches of ice on top of this water tower. So the guy gets off the ladder and then gets, again, he's on the very tip top of this thing. He starts walking around up there, trying to get to the hatch, and somehow or other, he slips. He slipped up there off of, I think is one of the beams or somewhere up there. He ended up slipping, and he fell, and he landed on that hard-ass water tower bell, the top of it, and he landed in such a way that it broke his femur. Yeah, I mean, of all things to happen. And so I believe it was his right femur that he landed on, and he broke that femur. Now, anybody that's in the medical professional know, and for those that aren't, I'm going to explain it. A femur fracture can be considered a traumatic injury because that's one of your main long bones. That's the long bone in the upper part of your leg. I know I'm showing you my arm, but that's the long bone in the upper part of the leg that connects basically from the knee all the way up to your hip. there's a lot of blood and a lot of marrow that go through that bone, and you fracture one of those, that starts spilling out into the cavity of the leg. You do risk bleeding to death with that. You got to get treatment for that right away. A double femur fracture, a left and a right, that's considered a major trauma. That's got to be dealt with immediately because that is a life-threatening emergency. One, you got some time. Two, you got very little time. You better be getting that person to a hospital immediately. So this guy falls up there, breaks his femur. He landed just right. He broke his femur. Well, now he's incapacitated on the top of this water tower, 250, 300 feet high in the air. He's got no cell phone with him. He's by himself, and the weather is now starting to change. That front's coming through. So he's up there for about what they estimate about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours. It's about 2:45. He's been trying to get people's attention, but you got high winds. He's very high in the air. You're not going to really hear people yelling from up there. I mean, that's hard to do, and he tried to get himself closer to the edge of that water tower, but you can't get too close, and you risk sliding off the bell, and then you land about 30 feet below on that catwalk that goes around the outside of the lower part of the water tower bell. Or you could miss the catwalk and fall all the way to the ground, which would be a lethal fall. The guy's trying to call for help. People can't hear him. And he's up there trying to wave his arms, hoping that somebody sees him up there, whether it be driving by. Because I'll show you what this looks like from the road. It's pretty high, and the main road is probably 1.5 miles from where this water tower is. And the water tower, like I said, it's pretty isolated to where it sits. And as the story goes, one of the other maintenance guys that worked with the town of Francesville just happened to be driving by that area, and he thought, well, I'll just go see what my buddy's up to. He's supposed to be working on the water tower. I'll go check out and see what's going on over there. So he drives up and he sees the guy's truck sitting there, but he doesn't see the guy. So he gets out, and I guess the guy's up there hollering, I'm up here, I'm injured, and he obviously can't hear it. So the last effort this guy has to get somebody's attention is he grabs every tool that he's got on him, and he starts throwing these tools off the top of the water tower. And one by one, and this is a last-ditch effort, and you got to be careful too, because if one of those tools hits that guy, I mean, that could kill him. Falling from that height. You imagine a Craftsman wrench falling from almost 300 feet? Yeah, that's going to do some damage. So regardless, he just starts throwing tools off of there. Well, the guy's walking around, and all of a sudden he hears a wrench hit the ground hard. He's like, well, that's odd. And then he sees another one hit the ground. And then a third and a fourth, and then all of a sudden he takes a step back and he looks up and he sees tools coming off the top of the water tower because he can't see the guy, but he can see the tools sailing off, and he's like, that's odd. So he goes back far enough, and he was able to call out to him. He saw him up there, and he climbed up the ladder because I don't think he had a ladder belt, so he had to climb up a little bit. He didn't have have the ability to go all the way. But he got to a point where he could maintain voice contact with this guy. The guy's like, I think I broke my leg. I can't move. I'm in a lot of pain. I need help. And so the guy goes back down the ladder. He gets to a phone, and he calls 911. Well, who's the first to respond? Francesville Volunteer Fire Department. Now, you got to remember, with a volunteer fire department, especially one like that, there's nobody at the station. These guys are coming from work. They're coming from farming, because a lot of volunteers in Indiana, they're all farmers pretty much. So most likely they're either in the fields or they're out working somewhere or they're in the barn. They're doing something or taking care of the animals. So a couple of the guys, that were available answered the call. And I can't imagine what they must have been thinking, God, there's a guy stuck on top of the water tower. I mean, you think the town of Francesville has I think one or two fire engines and maybe a tanker truck for hauling water. I mean, it's not a very big department. It's tiny. So they respond out there, and of course, they're looking at this thing, looking up at the water tower, and they're just like, how in the heck are we going to get this guy down from there? And again, by now, it's, you're getting on 3:15, 3:30. The sun's going down. The weather's starting to turn. The wind's picking up. It's starting to rain. The rain's starting to turn to ice. It's starting that change. So the fire chief for Francesville starts making phone calls. They call the first thing they thought about was maybe Logansport can help us out. So they call over to Logansport City Fire Department. They call their dispatch center and said, "Hey, we got a guy stuck on a water tower. Is there anything you guys can do to help out?" And they said, I don't believe at the time Logansport had a high angle rescue team, because that's basically what you need. And they said, "No, man, we don't have anything that's going to be able to help you guys." And so they weren't able to answer the call. Then they thought, well, let's call down south a little bit to the city of Lafayette. Lafayette's from Francesville is almost an hour away. And so they called City of Lafayette, and they're like, "Hey, we got a guy stuck on a water tower. Can you guys lend us a hand?" Well, whatever the reason was, whether they didn't have the type of units or they didn't have the right equipment, whatever it was, Lafayette said, "No, we can't. Sorry, we can't help you." And then they're like, "Well, crap, what do we do?" And then one of them, it dawned on them that, Monticello has a paid fire department, small little paid fire department. And because Monticello is the only paid fire department in a very big radius, when you work there, you are trained to do everything: swift water rescue, high angle rescue, low angle rescue, diver, motor vehicle extrication specialist, farm machinery rescue, grain bin rescue, hazardous materials technician, paramedics, firefighters, you name it. We're trained in everything. So they called White County Dispatch and said, "Hey, can you get us through to Monticello Fire? We got a problem here. We got a guy stuck on a water tower." So I guess they rang the station phone, dispatch did, and said, "Hey," they patched him through to the Francesville fire chief. And they said, "Hey, we got a situation here. We got a guy stuck on top of this water tower." And of course, the guys at Monticello were, "Absolutely, we'll come help you. Not sure how we're going to do this, but we'll come help you. We'll figure it out." So the guys that were assigned to the ladder, which we called at the time Truck 21, they went downstairs, and then they loaded up into Truck 21. And of course, anybody that was high angle rescue certified went on this call. So they took, I think, 3 or 4 guys on this call. They loaded up into Truck 21, and then they began the half-hour drive north to Francesville. So they get there, and of course, it's probably about a little after 4 now. It's wintertime. Again, the sun's starting to go down. The weather sucks. It's ice pellets, and the rain has now frozen anything the rain has hit. And they got a guy stuck up there. And so my captain, Captain Strange, was the one that went out and got the report from the fire chief and says, "I know the guy's up there. He's at the top of the bell, so he doesn't slide off. He said that his leg is broken, and he's in a lot of pain, and we got to try to figure out how to get him out of here." So everybody really quick put their heads together, and they said, "We can call the Coast Guard," which they did, and request that big, the orange and white and black helicopter. I think they call it correct me if I'm not saying it right, but I think it's the Dolphin helicopter, that big badass looking thing. They called the Coast Guard, and there was a nearby station up in northern Indiana that they had one available from. And so they called them, and the Coast Guard was very eager to help. They said they would send the helicopter, but they needed to get a crew together, and they needed to obviously get everything going. They needed to rotor up and get it warmed up, and that takes time. So they said it's going to be about 2 hours before we can get there. And they're thinking, well, this guy up here doesn't have 2 hours without any help. So while they had the Coast Guard in motion to get over to Francesville, Captain Strange decided that he was going to take it upon himself and go up there and help this guy out until they arrived. So on his person, on himself, he's got, obviously, when you're climbing like this, high angle rescue, you got your high angle rescue helmet. You're not using your fire helmet. It's a climbing helmet. He's got his climbing helmet. He's got his ladder belt. He's got all the ropes hanging off of him. He's, if you watched my SeaWorld video, the Sky Tower rescue video, when we were training for that, those guys that were up there had all those ropes and everything hanging off of them. That's a big rope belt for high angle rescue. And those things aren't light. They can weigh upwards of 15, 20 pounds. So he puts that on himself, and then he shoulders the giant medical bag that has all of the medical supplies in it, including a drug box, with pain medication in it, because you got to get this guy's pain controlled. You're going to have to move him around. And then the other thing that he straps to himself is a piece of equipment about somewhere between 2.5 and 3.5 feet long, and it's called a hair track or a traction splint. And that's what you use for broken femurs. It basically has a tool at the end that's got a ratchet on it and a little strap that wraps around the ankle, and it fastens to the leg up by the hip, and it pulls that bone back in place where you can stabilize it. Because the problem with a broken femur is if you picture both my arms together, if you picture this as a full femur, when a femur breaks, there's muscle here. There's muscle that attaches to both sides. And so when that breaks, what happens? It's like letting a rubber band loose. So those two bone ends snap together like that. They can either wind up grinding each other like this and slip and then end up, putting a ton of pressure on those muscles, or it can break and then it pops up like this, which can almost protrude and poke out of the skin. Femur fractures are incredibly painful because of the muscle pulling the two bone pieces together and basically shoving them together until you get that pressure off. It isn't unusual that people sometimes pass out from a femur fracture due to the overwhelming pain. So the captain gets all this stuff on him. He's probably got at least, at this point now, 60, almost 70 pounds of equipment on him. And then he's got his ladder belt. Now, this isn't the same ladder belt that with the channel lock that goes up the center with our little pin I was talking about earlier. This is just a belt with a giant carabiner latch on it that you have to pull in and then slap it on the rung and then let it go, and then it'll hold you. But they didn't have anything, the fire department didn't have anything that would fit that ladder. So he had to climb this ladder up there. This was a free climb, basically. And if he needed a break, he had to take that carabiner and manually open it and then slap it on one of those rungs and then lean back and take a quick break. Yeah. This is where he literally put his life on the line for this guy up there, because the conditions now were about anywhere from 15 to 25 mile an hour wind gusts. There was ice on the ladder because things were freezing now. The freezing rain had turned to ice pellets, which was starting to turn to snow. And so he's climbing a ladder 250, 300 foot in the air with a free climb. And when he needed a break, he had to squeeze that carabiner and loop it around the rung and just kind of take a quick breather. Because of the amount of weight that he carried up there, he stopped, I think it was 3 or 4 times is what they said, to get up there. It took him about 35-ish minutes to get up there because of how high it was. 2, it was an incredibly dangerous climb because of the ice and being a free climb, and then having to stop every so often just to kind of catch your breath. And then also, you got that wind blowing the way it was. And so he finally gets up there. He gets onto that catwalk that goes around the bottom part of the bell. He gets to the next ladder, begins that climb, and he gets to the top of the bell. And also now it's almost dark now too, because this is it's Indiana in winter. It gets dark early, and so now it's dark. He's got a flashlight on him, and he gets up to the guy. The guy's been up there now for probably 4.5, 5 hours, and so just by looking at the guy's leg, you could actually see where it was broken and how badly it was broken, where the femur was. And by, also do that, he cut part of his pant leg away just to get a quick look at it. Now, this is where the cool part gets here. Obviously, climbing up there with all that is amazingly, it's a hell of a dedication to saving somebody. But this part here, the medical side of things now has to happen. So the Coast Guard's still about a half hour away, I believe they were saying, because he had a radio up there with him. So Cap gets all of his medical stuff out up there. Again, you got to think the wind's blowing up there. You're 300 feet in the air almost. He gets all the medical stuff out, gets the IV start kit out, gets all the IV supplies, the needle, the saline flush, the actual IV bag. He spikes the IV bag, gets that ready, sets it aside, then grabs the guy's arm, puts the IV tourniquet on there to get a vein. He's holding a flashlight in his mouth because it's pretty much pitch black up there next to the blinking red light, the aircraft light that's up there. He's holding a flashlight in his mouth, finds a vein on this guy's arm, like what we call the AC vein right in here, gets the IV on the first try, puts the tubing in, starts the saline. I forget where he said he hung the bag, but there was something where the guy was sitting at that he was able to hang the saline bag up by it, so gravity would drip the fluid down into the guy's system, because when you have a traumatic injury like this, fluid replacement is key, because blood loss through a femur break can be really dangerous. So he gets that squared away, gets the guy's vital signs recorded, has them written down, I think on his palm or wherever he put them. And then next thing he does, he opens the drug box up. We use a medication a lot for severe pain in fire EMS called fentanyl. As I tell people, this isn't like the fentanyl that you're going to find in, the bad places. This is medical grade fentanyl. It has very, very, very intense pain-killing properties. And so for this kind of injury, that's the perfect medication for that. You want something that's going to not sedate the guy too much, but you got to take some of this pain away. Because next thing you got to manipulate the bone and get it back in place, which once you get it in place with that traction splint, it's pretty much instant relief. But getting to that point is ungodly painful. So Cap gets the IV in. He's got the fluid running. Now he draws up, I forget how much fentanyl he drew up, but being in Monticello, because we were so rural, we had really good protocols. Like we had the freedom to give a bunch of medicine if we needed to. The doctors trusted all of us because we were all excellent medics up there. And so he gives the guy a good dose of fentanyl, and he also drew up another medication called Zofran, which is for an upset stomach. You give that ahead of time because sometimes people don't respond to heavy-duty pain medicine like that too well, and it makes their stomach upset. So whether you think they're going to have a reaction or not, you automatically draw up a drug called Zofran, and you administer that right after the fentanyl. Or you can mix them together either way. And you can do it with morphine as well. Because you don't want somebody puking their guts out with a broken bone. You want to talk about immense pain. That's horrendous. Gets him stabilized. The next step is now he's got to get his right leg into this traction splint, which he does. He gets everything stabilized. And again, you're working on the top of a water tower with ice on it. Again, some of the most difficult conditions imaginable for a rescue, and some of the most dangerous conditions imaginable. One wrong move, and one or both of them could slide off the top of that bell and all the way down onto the catwalk, or as I mentioned earlier, miss the catwalk entirely and fall all the way to the ground. So again, insanely dangerous, and you gotta consider the wind too, and the temperature. The temperature at that time, once he got the IV started at, it was getting well into the freezing point. So now it was temperature was well below freezing. So now you got to consider the IV. You don't want that freezing. So you had to wrap it up in a like a towel that he had with him, try to keep it warm so it doesn't freeze. And so he's getting the guy fluids, and then he gets the guy's leg in that traction splint. And then once it's in there, there's a little collar. It's like a little Velcro collar this is my hand, but picture this as being a foot. That little collar wraps around the ankle so it locks against the foot and the heel, and then there's a cable, if you will, that attaches to a roller that's on a ratchet system. And once you have that little collar attached, then you start cranking that little ratchet system, and what it does, it starts pulling that black collar, and as it pulls the leg straight, and because the other part of it is fastened to the upper hip area, and so it starts pulling and pulling, and that's the painful part. But once it pulls it straight, and it pulls it enough, it pulls those bones away from each other. And once you get the relief like that, because you'll know it, the patient will be like, oh my God, that feels so much better. That's where you leave it. You just leave it. Don't touch it. Don't do anything. You secure it in place. So now this guy's up there. He's got pain medicine on board. He's got Zofran on board. The traction splint's on and in place. He's trying to keep the guy warm, because that's the other problem you got to worry about is hypothermia. And, basically he told him, he goes, I'm going to stay with you till you come down. He goes, I'm not leaving you. He goes, I will be right here with you the entire time. And all he did was talk to him. And I think he gave him one more smaller dose of pain medicine while they were up there waiting for the Coast Guard. Well, the Coast Guard arrives, and the helicopter comes overhead, and of course, they use the coordinates and everything, and two of the guys from the Coast Guard came down with the Stokes basket, which a Stokes basket is a big, big wire basket that's got all these straps on it. And they lower him down to the top of the water tower bell. And working with Captain Strange, they gently scoop the guy up, like very, very carefully. Because again, you got to be careful. You don't want to have him slip or anybody else slip and fall. So they all at once kind of gently scooped this guy up and then also stabilized his leg with the broken femur. And they got him into this Stokes basket. And once he was in the Stokes basket, there's a bunch of webbing that goes across the guy that's in there. It's like it kind of crisscrosses and ties in, and you want to make sure that guy doesn't go anywhere. The other difficulty with this is you're working underneath the helicopter. You have the downwash from the helicopter rotors, on top of the wind. So again, extremely difficult working conditions here. So they get the guy in the Stokes basket. They get him secured. The two guys from the Coast Guard, they hoist him up with the victim. They hoist him up into the helicopter. They get him inside. And the big Coast Guard helicopter flies across to the cornfield across the way where the other Monticello ambulance met them right near the cornfield. And then they landed. And in the meantime, Captain Strange gets all of his stuff gathered back up, puts all that stuff back on him, and then he begins the descent back down the water tower. Now, it was a little faster coming down, but it was still a slow go because, again, everything's icy. The rungs are icy. As I mentioned when he climbed up there, this is a free climb. He has nothing holding himself there until he takes that carabiner on his ladder belt and locks it in place. I think he only had to stop once or twice on the way down because, he was obviously ready to get down from there. And coming down is a whole lot easier than going up with all that weight. So he got all the way down and got in one of the fire department vehicles and drove across the way and went to where the Coast Guard helicopter was landing in the cornfield. And they brought the ambulance cot, the ambulance stretcher out there. And with the guy on the Stokes basket and everything, they put him on the stretcher and got him all covered up and everything, put him in the ambulance, and then drove him south to one of the hospitals in Lafayette because Monticello had a hospital, but and anybody that's in the fire EMS profession knows the word when I say Band-Aid station. That's all it was. The Monticello Hospital is not going to do anything for this guy. So they had to get him south to Lafayette. They went down to, I think it was St. Elizabeth Hospital in Lafayette, where they offloaded him there. They started to, they got him out of Stokes basket and everything. They started his treatment, obviously got x-rays and whatnot, and I guess the break was so severe that he needed surgery. And I don't think that they had the capabilities there for that type of surgery, so they had to transfer that guy to Indianapolis, and which is where he ended up going a couple hours later. Of course, he was all stabilized and everything else, so he was emergently transferred down to Indianapolis, where he underwent surgery. The guy made a full recovery with no issues. And again, this was before I was working there, but I guess he did make a few stops at the fire station from time to time whenever he drive through Monticello, and he thanked everybody for that effort. And so that rescue is forever known as the Francesville Water Tower Rescue. And anybody that's been at the city of Monticello for any time, if you showed up at that firehouse and said, "Hey, can you guys tell me about the Francesville Water Tower Rescue?" somebody there is going to be able to tell you the story. I mean, it's legendary. The work that Cap Strange did on that guy and just the insane risk to his life it just encompasses everything that we do as firefighter medics. This is why we get into the profession. We don't get into the profession to wear the shirts and ride around on the big shiny fire trucks or the ambulances with the sirens going, or as we call it, the wee-woos. That's extra. Even the attention, a lot of, you get in the fire service, even EMS and that, you tend to get a little extra attention, but all of that's extra, even the time off, the pay, the pay's finally going up to where it should have been decades ago. But again, that's all extra. What matters is we get into this line of work to serve and protect the public, and whenever needed, we will do whatever it takes to save somebody's life. And that was a perfect example, because They could have easily said, you know what? That looks pretty bad. Yeah, the Coast Guard said they'd be here in a little bit. We'll just hang out here. We'll climb up that ladder a little ways. I'll stay in voice contact, and yeah, we'll be all right. But no, the guys from Monticello got there, and they had a plan in place, and there was no stopping them. They were going to get up there and get that guy help, and that's what Captain Strange did. And like I said, every time I've heard that story, it gives me goosebumps, and even telling it, it still gives me goosebumps because while I wasn't there to see it, just hearing about it, you can imagine it. You can't help but put yourself there and think about what must have that been like, you know? And the guys that were there, they just were like, it was unreal, you know? It was something like out of a movie that you would see. And so there's a quote that we're going to wrap this up with. So there's a quote that Chief Bobby Halton gave in the 2019 FDIC Firefighter and EMS conference in Indianapolis, which, if you're not familiar, that's one of the biggest fire department conferences in the world. I mean, firefighters, paramedics from all around the world descend on Indianapolis. And every year they have this keynote speaker, and for the longest time it was Chief Halton. And sadly, he passed away. I think it was after 2020. I can't remember if it was 2021, 2022. But sadly, he ended up passing away, and now they've got other guys that have carried on the legacy of Chief Halton and giving these amazing keynote speeches. But in 2019, Chief Halton gave the keynote speech, and it was in reference to the fire department being the best damn job in the world. And one of the quotes that he put up there on the screen for everybody to see was a quote by Robert W. Copeland. And this was a quote from wartime, basically saying that we may not make it out of this, but we're going to do whatever we can to make as big as an impact as possible. And the quote was this. I'll put this up right here. And the quote goes like this: "This will be a fight against overwhelming odds from which survival cannot be expected. We will do what damage we can." And that Francesville water tower rescue was a perfect example of that quote. There was a high possibility that either Captain Strange or the victim or both of them could have died during this rescue because of the conditions. The conditions were some of the worst conditions imaginable. You know, as I keep saying, high winds, icy conditions. It's nighttime. You know, you're starting an IV with a flashlight in your mouth, for crying out loud. I mean, it's just some of them, and just the bitter cold, you know, trying to focus and concentrate up there to help a guy in need. And the guy that fell up there was somewhere between 68 and 72 years old. You know, not old and ancient by any means, but still an injury like that could be severely catastrophic if you don't get the right help to him in an appropriate amount of time. You know, so it's one of those things where the odds are very overwhelming, you know, just to climb up there without any way to secure yourself to that ladder other than a hook, a big carabiner hook that you have in your hand that if you need it, you can slap it on there, and then you got to take it off if you want to keep on climbing. So like I said, it's a free climb. There's nothing harnessing you to that ladder. One slip and you're coming all the way down, you know, so it's a fight. It was against overwhelming odds. And at the time, you know, survival, we'd like to think that everybody's going to survive, but there is a lot of danger there. And in everybody's mindset, it was, we will do what damage we can. And that message is also something to keep in mind for everything else that we face. We all go through hard times, whether it be, you know, we have a loss of a job, whether it be, you know, a relationship takes a turn for the worst and you know, people end up brokenhearted and you can't figure out what the hell happened, or, you know, why is this going on? Why is this happening? It doesn't make any sense. And you still have to maintain a focus to keep moving forward. And if you approach the difficulties in life with that mentality, like I'm going to charge forward and I'm going to do whatever damage I can. I'm going to just, you know what? Things suck right now, and I'm going to keep on charging forward, and I'm going to get shit done, and I'm going to do what damage I can. Meaning, I'm going to get things done. And I know it's going to be difficult. I know it's going to be hard. moving forward, if you lose a job, you lose a relationship, you've got, even in recent times, like my video I did about a week ago, Adam the Woo, a big YouTuber, passed away, and it really caused a lot of pain to a lot of people. He had a lot of people that really cared about him. And so a lot of people are going through this really rough time trying to figure out, why did this happen? Why am I so brokenhearted? Is this normal? Should I not feel like this? What do I do? And it's all part of moving yourself forward and having that aggressive mentality that I'm going to overcome whatever's in front of me, and I know it's going to have a positive outcome, whatever the case may be. When you approach things like that with that mentality, you cannot lose, because at the end of the day, whatever happens, you gave your absolute best effort, and that you can be happy and satisfied within that you gave it all. I mean, you threw it all out there on the line, just like with those football players last night with the Bears and Rams game. Man, they put that all out there. And the Bears didn't win last night, sadly, but even their fans, man, they gave those guys a standing ovation as they came off the field, because it was the effort. The Bears were down to fourth and 10. Caleb Williams was being chased. He was all the way back at the 40-yard line, and he freaking heaved a pass that Cole Kmet caught in the end zone. But again, similar mentality. It's overwhelming odds, but we're going to do what damage we can. We're going to do whatever we can do to make this happen. And so that's my message to all of you. Keep that in the forefront of your minds for everything you do. And yes, it may be difficult, but give it your all and don't stop. Keep going. Just like that Francesville water tower rescue. Because you never know what the outcome may be should you throw it all out there. At the end of the day, you can walk away happy and satisfied because you know that you gave it all and you gave it for a worthy cause. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that story. I enjoyed telling it. I know it's a long one. Hope it grabbed your attention, and I hope I told it with some fervor and some passion, because it makes me proud to share that story, and it makes me proud that I got to learn under Captain Strange. The things that he taught me, I still use to this day, whether it be in firefighting, EMS, or even in my personal life. He was an amazing mentor, and to anybody that's in the fire service, I can only hope that they find a mentor as good as Captain Strange was to me. So, y'all take care of yourselves. Have a great rest of your day. Let's go Hoosiers. Let's take care of those Miami Hurricanes tonight. Let's take them from a Category 5 all the way down to a low-level tropical storm. Y'all take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. More story times to come. Paramedic Adventure 17 is out. See ya.